All right, so this is the last in-depth breakdown of the week. We're going to be discussing how and why Islam Makhachev snatches Jack Della Maddalena's chain at UFC 322. As always, you can trust me because I own UFC Fight Pass. I actually researched this fight, and I'm not basing my assessments on feeling. I will be providing counter arguments for the points that I make, and I will not be beefing with anybody who does not pay for the monthly subscription of UFC Fight Pass. I will also be taking the day off tomorrow in order to get new content together for the following week. It's been a minute since I've just brainstormed on one dedicated day. I've been working all week as well. Like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss that or any other future uploads. If you want to stay tapped in with future content from the UFC Ball Knower, make sure you're turning post notifications on too. Let's get right into this one. So the first thing I'm going to discuss is going to be Jdm'S uber glazed boxing system. There's a reason why people hold it in such high regard. He's good at boxing. Don't get it confused. This guy is a great boxer, but his abilities with the hands are very overstated. Even Ilia Topuria, who I would consider to be narrowly a better boxer than Jdm, all things considered, I mean, he's not perfect. If they were perfect boxers, then they would box. It'll always look a little bit different in MMA. My thing with Jdm's boxing system is that he's much better at dealing damage than mitigating it, and he struggles with intercepting strong jabs, and he often just absorbs them, hence why his nose looks like a lightning bolt. Jdm is great at volume punching and mixing targets, and that's why people talk so highly of his boxing, but he doesn't have the power to win every single 50-50 exchange, whenever that exchange does consist of like 4 to 5 punches between him and his opponent. He's got to land first and last in order to win the exchange. And the reason why he's such a good boxer is because most of the time he is doing that. But he does get caught is what I'm trying to say. And he was competitively striking at range with Bilal for like 2 rounds before he started flowing. And in those 2 rounds, I mean, Bilal Muhammad was landing some meaningful offense. And in round 5, he did a lot of damage to Jack Della Maddalena too. In terms of defense, which I think is the main focus of the shortcomings of this guy's striking, offensively is great, and we've already talked about the things that he does do properly, but his defense is largely void of a parry game whenever people are throwing meaningful jabs. Kevin Holland was just like pawing at Jdm's high guard the whole fight, and since there was no threat of the takedown either, he knew that Kevin Holland wasn't jabbing to do anything else other than to set up additional punches that were also coming at that same high guard. And he doesn't move his head either. He's mainly using footwork and stance switches, which I mean, I guess you could constitute as footwork still, to get out of the way of punches that otherwise would land. He's very good at cutting angles through different striking sequences to win them and also stay safe. And if you do want to consider stance switching as a skill falling under footwork, which I think it does, it's the most underrated part of Jack Della Maddalena's stand-up game, and I think it largely holds it together. Otherwise, in the fights that I did view to get my takes together for this video, I watched him absorb a lot of jabs and right hands and left hands as well that were just splitting right through the guard. Speaking of left hands that split through the guard, now we're on to talking about Islam's very underrated boxing system. And yeah, I mean, if you haven't clicked off up until this point, I said some bad words. I said that Jack Della Maddalena, I'm not going to use the word overrated, but I mean, it is definitely overstated how good he is at boxing. The lethality of his hands, what he's able to accomplish in his fights with just boxing. But just as much as people hype up Jack Della Maddalena's boxing, they're equally sleeping on Islam Makhachev's boxing and his striking in general. But I mean, we just recently got a highlight finish against Volk with a high kick, so that's something that people are going to be talking about more than what Islam is able to do with his hands. But dude, just so we're all on the same page, Islam outstruck Dustin and Volk. He did. In the first Volk fight, he outstruck Volk. And he outstruck Dustin Poirier too. People literally just saw that elbow landed and opened up his forehead, and they're like, "Oh my God, you see what Dustin Islam with life and death with Dustin?" No, he didn't. He didn't. He got elbowed in the clinch, and Dustin stuffed a couple of takedowns, and that's it. Islam also did not get dropped by Moicano. In real time, whenever I was watching the event, it looked like Islam Makhachev got dropped by Renato Moicano on the feet. That punch hit his armpit, his shoulder. And Islam also dropped Charles before subbing him. And people would just completely forget about all these things, dude. Like, this guy, he throws bombs. He has sneaky, crazy power. And that was at 155. And I think it'll be exacerbated by the weight gain. The reason why this guy's boxing is so, like, awkwardly effective is because it's not conventional. And there's the threat of the takedown that makes even the most competent strikers apprehensive to maintain a high guard or let their hands go, making Islam get to work his boxing and score significant strikes whenever he otherwise wouldn't be able to do that if he was fighting a dude who had the same strengths as himself. But in that event, like we saw in the Arman Tsarukyan fight, a majority of those matchups will just be wrestling. I think that Islam's left hand is going to be the true story of this fight. I think he's going to land the left hand on Jack Della Maddalena, likely dropping him with it at some point in the fight. He had Volkanovski hitting breakdancing moves, hitting him with the left hand. And even though it was a right hook that put down Charles, him and Jack Della Maddalena both rock a high guard, and the left hand was passing right through the guard of Charles Oliveira, and it was clipping Jdm'S over and over again. Repeatedly in that fight was this man just getting zinged by a hard left hand, and then a takedown would come afterwards. Islam does a pretty good job of stringing together combinations as well on the feet with the boxing. Not as well as JDM does this, but I'm going to say it. I think that Islam Makhachev's defense in the stand-up it's better than JDM's. He has this weird way of always keeping himself safe. It looks ugly as all hell, but I mean, he's not taking crucial damage for the most part in these fights. Again, there was the elbow that Dustin was able to land on a clinch break, but in open range in the stand-up, whenever he's just striking with people, typically it's not Islam taking the brunt of the damage. It's him inflicting damage on his opponent at distance most of the time. And this is courtesy of him not working in close like Jack Della Maddalena. Jack Della Maddalena is always going to take more damage with his fighting style than a fighter like Islam because he pocket exchanged with everybody. And that's where he's successful, is in the phone booth. Islam Makhachev maintains a healthy distance, and the fighters that are often match made with him, that are strikers at least, they want to make sure to keep their distance and to move on the outside. And since they're prioritizing not letting Islam Makhachev get too close, Islam is free to dictate the range by using his skill set, which is these lunging blisses with the left hand, shooting takedowns from the same range, or firing off a jab, which is also a good weapon for Islam Makhachev that I think will be effective in this fight. Islam has a pretty good jab. I would say the striking on paper like Anthony Smith is like 70-30 in favor of Islam whenever all things are considered. This is because Islam has allowed so much more variation in his approach to this fight. Jack Della Maddalena has to create the perfect scenarios for him to land shots on Islam Makhachev, and he can't try anything different as far as like a kick-heavy approach, which Islam would be free to use again, as it was effective against the other Australian that he was able to beat. He won't be getting punished for this, as if Jack Della Maddalena was to come out with the kick-heavy offense, that would be him setting up a takedown for Islam Makhachev, giving him his leg to attack a single leg off of, or to grab the single leg and chain it into a body lock and then get a trip out in the middle of the cage. So that's not smart. So JDM has to enter boxing range and get in close with Islam Makhachev. And Islam is really good at concealing his shots behind boxing combinations. And there's meaningful power behind them as well. He's never just trying to touch people with his hands. He's trying to do real damage up top, and then he'll change levels and complete a takedown. And I think that a clinch or an attempt at wrestling will happen every single time Jack Della Maddalena is in the range for that to occur. And we don't even know how Islam Makhachev is game planning to take this fight. It may just be all wrestling, right? And like I said before, if Jack Della Maddalena comes out wanting to play range and throws kicks, unless he throws them behind his punches, he's done for. Ultimately, what I'm thinking is that he'll have to force pocket exchanges that may never even happen if Islam plans to predominantly wrestle, because Islam guaranteed is not going to fight like Bilal in this fight. Bilal Muhammad was trying to prove that he was this striker and could be competitive in the boxing with Jack Della Maddalena, talking about he had Canelo hands and stuff, so that kind of put a chip on his shoulder and gave him something to prove to the fans. And Islam Makhachev is just trying to get his belt and go home. Another thing I noticed too is that in the clinch, JDM has his most serious technical breakdowns as far as striking defense goes. He throws caution to the wind and he recklessly disengages, pretty much always taking damage on the break. Or if he's the one getting pressured into the clinch and you choose to disengage, he just shells and stands there for a little bit for you to get like 3 or 4 punches off before you get back to the center of the octagon. So another facet of this game could be dirty boxing, which would work really well for Islam because he was having success in the Dustin Poirier fight, landing some cheeky shots in the clinch wherever it was able to be done. The next point that I'm going to be discussing is how JDM scrambling will not work. Every single time that JDM gets single-legged in the fights that I've watched, he always tries some variation of a guillotine sweep, and this is so he can reverse the entry of the takedown or just to get up by creating the space. Against Islam Makhachev, who's going to be so heavy on him if he does try for that same sweep, he's just going to be giving up side control or his back for the free ski. And JDM was also getting cradled like a baby versus Burns too. But it's hard for me to give a good assessment of how this fight's grappling will go on the basis of what I saw in the Gilbert Burns fight, because it was a couple minutes into round 1 where Jack Della Maddalena broke his like forearm, so that wasn't really him in there. Quite remarkable is it that he was still able to win that fight and get up and scramble with only the use of his right arm at full capacity at least. The only way that JDM stops the wrestling of Islam Makhachev is to completely stuff shots, because if his plan is to accept the ground and to get off a stand-up down there, and doing this by initiating a scramble, he will not be able to do that. The way Dustin Poirier was able to break free from Islam Makhachev's grip was by turning the other direction and like dolphin diving out of the grasp of Makhachev. And that came with injury risk too, because his ACL was torn in that fight. So that is another possibility here. Wrestling with a fighter that has the grip strength and control of Islam Makhachev is prone to potentially even lead to injury. And based off of what I've seen out of Makhachev at 155, and if we're using the Basil Hafez fight that JDM got into as a point of reference for how he might perform in this main event, if he comes out and tries that same game plan against Islam Makhachev with the same volume of takedowns, because Basil Hafez shot 20 of them, and nearly every single time Jack Della Maddalena went for that same guillotine sweep, dude, he's getting choked by Islam. Like, he's getting subbed so easily. Largely, I think that the clinch is going to be the undoing of JDM. Islam has a solid chance of being generally stronger than him there and scoring takedowns for free using his judo. The way that Makhachev integrates judo and traditional wrestling is honestly so amazing. Maybe that is Sambo. The way that he can elevate a high crotch single leg and then kick the foot out from under his opponent that's like in midair, just so that they can't base by the time that they get back to the ground. It's so high level. It's amazing. It really is. And the last thing I'm going to talk about here is going to be how size will not be a factor. Cardio will not be a factor. When have we seen Islam tire out except for in the first Volk fight whenever he couldn't rehydrate due to the Australian Commission's rules? Yeah, he was winded at the end of the Dustin Poirier fight, but he had enough strength and gas to finish it, and Dustin Poirier was even more tapped out than he was by the end of that one. And the reason why he has that incredible gas tank is because Khabib works the fighters in his camps like horses, and he even gave Ikram Aliskerov, who fought on Brave CF before he made it to the UFC, and had a 3-round fight that he ended up finishing against, of all people, Denis Tululin. And in that fight against Denis Tululin, Ikram Aliskerov looked like he was on his last leg, and if he didn't get that submission at the time that he did, then he would have went into anaphylactic shock and perished on that night. And what Khabib was able to do in his last camp was give Ikram the ability to wrestle with the pace for 3 rounds against Junyoung Park. And that is courtesy of being his strength and conditioning coach. Islam Makhachev has been training with Khabib his entire life. And look at the display of cardio that we've just seen in the Umar fight against Mario Batista, where he put down one of the most impressive work rates across a 15-minute fight that I've ever seen in the UFC. And we know that Islam Makhachev got up to 190 through the use of creatine or horse meat or chicken, broccoli, and rice, whatever it was. He was 190, mid-190s by the time he started cutting weight for this fight. And Media Day, that's him right there. He looks massive, dude. He looks really filled out for 170. He looks like a proper welterweight, like I had been talking about prior to this. And by comparison, JDM had said on Adesanya's YouTube channel, Freestyle Bender, that heavy for him is the same weight that Islam reached before his cut in the fight camp. Roughly, which is 87 kilograms, 191 pounds. And to top all that off, JDM only has 1 inch of reach and height worth of an advantage over Islam Makhachev whenever we're comparing their frames. So that's not really that big of a deal. This isn't going to be like oh, no, he can't do this. He's too small. No, it's not. No, not at all. So now we're down to possible outcomes, right? This is what I'm going with. I think that Islam's bulk up has given him touch of death KO power, and the takedown threat is going to short circuit JDM like we've never seen before. Islam Makhachev is not Bilal Muhammad, you guys. And I feel like I shouldn't even need to say that. We should all just understand it implicitly. But I see a lot of these people in the comment sections being like, well, that didn't work for Bilal. So why do you think it's going to work for Islam Makhachev against JD? Yes, their grappling systems are completely different physicality-wise. It's night and day. Their game planning is going to be different. I think that Islam is going to drop JDM in round 1 in open range or in the clinch, and he's going to chase a TKO finish. I think he's going to knock out Jack Della Maddalena, bro. And I'm like, no laughing. I'm saying this with a straight face. Like, this is actually what I think. I'm not rage baiting you guys. I think that Islam Makhachev is going to knock out JDM in round 1. Another outcome would be Islam and Jack strike competitively at range. Islam level changes and lands a trip on the cage. JDM is going to fall into this takedown attempt in order to try to use his momentum to try and reverse position. And he's just going to end up getting himself choked. Another outcome could be Islam Makhachev mistimes a takedown entry and eats a big shot that puts him down after a couple rounds worth of neck-and-neck boxing exchanges that Jack is ultimately winning narrowly, and then he just knocks out Islam. And then the fourth thing that I could see happening is a very cheeky split decision victory for either fighter that people cry robbery over forever. But, where's the fun in that?